Melina is one of the most mysterious and important characters in all of Elden Ring. We originally see her at the very start of the game with Torrent, where she finds us and tells us that we are destined for a great journey. And throughout our entire time playing the game, she guides us on our path to claiming the Elden Ring, at one point even choosing to sacrifice herself in the Flame of Ruin and the Goblet of the Giants, as a catalyst to burn the Erd Tree to let you inside. But as many players might not know, this is not the only thing that can happen here. If players decide to go for the lore of the Frenzied Flame ending, where you meet with the Three Fingers and brand yourself to become Lord of the Frenzied Flame and take on the Flame of Ruin yourself, Melina will instead leave you and turn against you at the end of the game, where she will suddenly change her appearance to this, something much more sinister. If we zoom in on her eyes, we notice that she is bearing a striking resemblance to Ranni, as pointed out by YouTuber Bandit Games, donning a crow's feet tattoo on her eye, just like Ranni does, which for those of you that don't know, signifies death, and more importantly, bearing a gloomy purple eye, something that sounds eerily familiar to a lot of lore we can read about in item entries in the game about a mysterious figure called the Gloam Eyed Queen. You see, the Gloam Eyed Queen, or Dust-Eyed Queen as she is also called, was said to be the bearer of the Rune of Death itself, and led the Godskin Apostles in a venture to kill many great deities. But when Marika stole the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring and gave it to her shadow Malekith, the Gloam Queen herself seemed to have died along with it, implying that the Rune of Death may have been the actual Gloam Eyed Queen herself. So years later, when Ranni then kicked off the events of the Shattering and stole a fragment of the Rune of Death that caused Deathroot to spread throughout the land through Godwyn, could it be that this event actually birthed Melina, a reincarnation of the Gloam Eyed Queen herself? We know in Melina's description that she was birthed at the foot of a great tree with her mother lying inside, which seems to be an obvious reference to Marika and the Erd Tree most likely. But this is confusing as Marika is the one that stole the Rune of Death in the first place, thus killing the Gloam Eyed Queen. Where this takes a crazy turn is maybe this description is actually a reference to Ranni, and Ranni is actually Melina. Being birthed from Marika could make sense for Ranni, as she is the daughter of Radagon and Queen Rennala, but remember it is heavily implied in the game that Radagon and Marika are the same person, or at some point joined. So could this mean that Ranni, daughter of Marika through proxy of Radagon, was born near the Great Tree as a vessel for the new Gloam Eyed Queen of Death, after the banishing of the Rune of Death itself? Could this explain why Ranni and Melina have so many similarities, like being some of the first people we meet, both knowing about Torrent, both helping us on our journey, and both having very similar facial features and matching tattoos? Is Ranni or Melina, or both, the reincarnation of the Queen of Death and Destruction herself, the Gloam Eyed Queen? This would also perfectly explain why Ranni kicked off the events of the Shattering, as she wanted to bring back destined death to what it once was, and Melina could either be Ranni herself or the actual queen while Ranni is simply serving her. It also explains why in the Lord of the Frenzied Flame ending, where we essentially become an eternal being, Melina now vows to hunt us down, because as the Queen of Death, it is her destiny to now stop us as an eternal being. We can even read in the Deathroot description this paragraph. On the night of the dire plot, the stolen Rune of Death enabled the first death of a demigod. Later, the Rune of Death spread across the lands between through the underground roots of the Great Tree, sprouting in the form of Deathroot. So it seems as if Melina, Ranni, or both of them if they are the same person indeed, were birthed from the Erd Tree as the Gloam Eyed Queen, and the reason they help us as the Tarnished is they need to set forth the catalyst to burn the tree and once again take over as destined death. An interesting theory, for sure.